Hi, everybody. Hello and welcome. I'm Melissa Mello. I am one of the coordinators in the Rady Faculty of Health Science Family Center. Our newly created center is here to support learners, faculty and staff as they navigate life changes, the challenges of caregiving for either elderly or children while studying,
Recording
or working
in
within the
progress.
Rady Faculty of Health Science, and to provide a more family-friendly campus. Today's session is Reading Food Labels with an Educated Eye, and it will be facilitated by Dr. Snehil Dua. Dr. Dua is an instructor at the Department of Food and Nutritional Sciences at the University of Manitoba. She came to Canada from India 20 years back to pursue her PhD in the same department. For more than 10 years, she has been teaching nutrition through life cycle, food processing, food safety, and policy courses. She has talked about food nutrition, nutrition labeling, and much more at several community events. And she enjoys talking about food, nutrition, human behavior towards food. And we are very lucky to have her here today with us. But before we begin the session, I'd like to do the land acknowledgement. The University of Manitoba campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And just a few housekeeping rules. If we could keep our mics muted during the presentation, but feel free to use the chat box, and Dr. Dua will answer any questions as they arise. And I just also wanted to let everybody know that we are recording today's session as well. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Dua.
Thank you, everyone. Hi. So I'm going to talk about reading labels, food labels with an educated eye. So I'm going to share my screen. Created a small presentation. Hopefully I'll not take too much time presenting, and I'll be able to answer questions that you have. So nutrition labels are becoming more complicated, and looks like we need a PhD to actually understand what is on the labels. Okay. So what is happening with our regulations? Nutrition labels, food labels are regulated in Canada, but not every aspect of the food label is regulated. So there are two laws in Canada. One is Food and Drug Act and its regulations. So under the Food and Drug Regulations, these labels are regulated. That's the main law under which these regulations are there. There is also a new law in Canada, that is Safe Food for Canada Act. Under that, there are Safe Food for Canada regulations. So a small portion of the regulation of food labels also comes under these regulations. But major is in Food and Drug Regulation, which is a pretty old law, but its regulations are amended every now and then. Labeling regulations were revised in 2016. December 15, 2016, new regulations for labeling came. What's timeline looking like currently is companies were given 5 years to comply with the new regulations. So 5 years since December 2016, December 15, 2016 till 2021. So until December 14, 2021, the old and new labels are both formats are allowed, they are valid. But starting December 15, it will be only the new ones, new regulations. So the companies will need to be in compliance. However, due to the impact of COVID, government has given a little bit more time. So first year of this new regulations, starting December 15, 2021, this year, companies are being given, they'll be advised. This year will be used more as an education purpose rather than compliance and fining people for not being in compliance. Then another year will be given to start checking if the labels are in compliance or not. And if they're not, then they the date by which they will be in compliance, but that has to happen before December 14, 2023. So there is a couple of more years until we actually may see all the labels actually following the new regulations. So currently we are seeing both types of labels. When I shop, I see majority of the labels are based on the old format. Some are based on the new format. So we'll look at these different formats, and we'll also see why these changes are coming. Are they helpful? Now, almost all packaged foods requires certain information on the packages, on the labels, but there are some exemptions, and these are some exemptions. I'm not going to read them all, but as you can see, there's some fresh meat, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits. They do not have to have these detailed labels on them, the packaged ones. The spices, they don't need to have them. Wine, alcoholic beverages that have content of alcohol more than 0.5%, they don't need to have them. If the store packages something at the retail itself, such as a block of cheese seen here, they don't need to have that detailed label information. They're not regulated with that. The reasons are various for these various products. For example, for spices, there are not significant amount of nutrients in spices. We use spices in small amounts and there are not many nutrients in there. So why bother doing all the nutritional evaluation of that? Fresh vegetables and fruits and meats, these fresh foods, they are not transformed into anything different. So their nutritional value is known and they're sold fresh. So there's no reason to go every batch, evaluate the nutritional composition and then do that. So they're exempted. The alcohol industry is actually very tightly regulated by other regulations. So that's why they got an exemption here, because they're very, very tightly regulated elsewhere. The retail stores, when they package, they do not have that information and they are trying to sell the product within a day or two. So they are also exempted. But other than that, if you eat at a deli in a grocery store, those are exempted because they're ready for sale and so on. So those kind of things are exempted. But other than that, all packaged foods need to have certain information on them. And this is the mandatory information. There has to be a common name. There has to be some kind of brand name. And it often ends up being quite deceptive. And we'll talk about that in a moment. There's manufacturers or importers' name and address. Sometimes people are saying, that doesn't tell me anything if it is just the importer's name. Walmart imported something. Okay, where did they get it from? So that is something that people do not like, but that's the regulations we'll talk a little bit more about. There's lot number, there is date, best before date, and that kind of information that is required. Best before date and those dates are required for certain products, but not for all. So we'll talk about that. Allergen statement. If there is an allergen present, there's a list of priority allergens listed in the regulations. If any of those is present, or if sulfites are there, or if gluten component is present, then there has to be an allergen statement. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. The amount has to be listed in metric amount. It has to be bilingual, English and French. That's required by law. There has to be a nutrition fact table that we'll talk in more detail about. There has to be an ingredient list that we'll talk in detail about, because these are directly related to nutrition. And then irradiated, if applicable. In Canada, if a food is irradiated by radioactive material, it has been irradiated, then it needs to carry the logo and a statement saying that it is irradiated, because some people are concerned about the safety of such foods. Grades are also, you may buy meat, for example, beef, you may buy prime or triple A, B, and so on. So these grading, if applicable, that is required. So this is mandatory information, and some of this I'll dig more deep into. Now, my advice when it comes to reading the nutrition, the food labels, is ignore the front panel of the food package, or read it with less seriousness, or don't give it that much importance, because front package is a way of the company to advertise their product. They are trying to attract you, they're trying to advertise you, and they will put the statements that you like. And many of those statements are not regulated. The government doesn't say if you put this kind of statement, it has to be truthful. Some of those statements have to be regulated. So there are some statements that are regulated. You may see these kind of statements on the front. These are regulated, such as health claims, regulated health claims. These are very, very tightly regulated. In Canada, there's only a small list of such claims that is allowed. And if you, I don't know if you've ever seen any product with saying that this food, consuming this food in certain amount will provide you this much of this nutrient, and that will lower your risk of osteoporosis, or that will lower your risk of cancers, or lower your blood cholesterol. These kind of statements, if you've seen, they're very rare, because there's a list of conditions for each statement that the product must meet. Only then that statement is allowed. So they're very tightly regulated. And because of that, many of these products that are advertised as healthy or natural and this and that, because they're not regulated, they can put those kind of claims. But when it comes to these kind of statements, then the product has to meet so many conditions, which most of the processed foods don't really meet those conditions. So that's why they can't put those statements. Very, very few products I've seen that have this kind of statement. I'll show you at least one such product label. Organic claim is regulated in Canada. So if a product says organic, then it is certified by CFIA, some agencies that are certified by CFIA to certify these products. So these are regulated. A product can be called organic only if it meets certain criteria. Otherwise, you will see contains 78% organic content. That kind of statement is also allowed. Or in the ingredient list, there is some organic ingredients listed. That is also allowed in different conditions. But something like 100% organic or certified organic, these kind of statements are not allowed in Canada. There are allergen statements, as I mentioned, those are mandatory. So sometimes they are in the front of the packet, because if somebody has an allergy, they want to be able to spot that food as quickly as possible. So that may be on the front panel, but it is also on the back panel. So we'll look at that. Grades, lean, extra lean, some packages such as fresh meat, otherwise they are not required to have labels, but they may carry this lean versus extra lean. So that is also regulated in Canada. GMO, you might find, if you are interested in non-GMO foods, that could be on the front, and there are different bodies that certify those, but in Canada it is not regulated. However, our government requires that if the statement is made, it is truthful. They don't have to declare it, that is GMO or not, but if it is declared that it's not GMO, then it has to be truthful. So there are certain conditions for that to be able to make such a claim on the package. Other than this, anything else on the front package is not regulated. So you're wondering what else is there on the front package that is not regulated. Natural word is not regulated. There is no definition of natural. Anybody can call anything natural, and they can sell it to you, and you may think, oh, it is healthier, it is wholesome, right? That's what we think about natural, is it's wholesome. It's in its original form. It is not overly processed, but there is no such definition. So if somebody puts natural and it is not natural, it's overly processed, it contains all sort of additives, there is no penalty for that. And if you go to any grocery store these days, any large grocery store, there is a natural food section. And if you enter that, I'm pretty sure many of you go there, I avoid it. The food there is way more expensive than anywhere else in the grocery store. So the food labeled as natural is way more expensive. And oftentimes when I go there, especially because of my son, he makes me go there sometimes, and look at those ingredient lists and all that, oftentimes I find there's no reason for those foods to be so expensive or to carry the the idea or the impression that they are natural in any way. So it is totally, you'll have to read those labels more carefully if you buy from there, so that make sure that it is really worth it. Is it really, it is really wholesome, because that's not a guarantee there. And the section of foods, grocery stores is becoming larger. GMO free, as I already mentioned, is not regulated, but if it is mentioned, then there have to be certain conditions. Brand name is not regulated, and I'm going to show you some example. Images or package images, you will say, who cares about those images? I'll show you, we actually do care about those images. made from this food and that food. These kind of things are not regulated, but these claims may be seen. And then again, I'm going to show you an example that has a lot of this misleading information. And because it's not regulated, therefore, they are able to put this kind of information and mislead us. So I'm going to show you this product. This Ocean Spray Cranberry and Pomegranate Juice. Let's go to their website. Let me know if you can see it. I'm hoping there is no glitch. This is the package. So if you look at this package, what does it look like? What is it a juice of? It is 100% juice blend. And then it says no sugar added, cranberry and pomegranate, 100% vitamin C. It has pictures of cranberries and pomegranate, right? That's what it is. There's nothing else here. And if you go on their website, there is, again, this kind of information, no artificial flavor or preservatives or coloring, that kind of stuff. So if we look at this image, hopefully you're able to see my slides now. I'll make it presenter view. What impression do you get from this? That it is cranberry and pomegranate juice, right? 100% juice, no sugar added. That's what it is. And now let me copy its other information from the website, because you're not able to see the website. If we look at its nutrition information, or just the ingredient list, so if you can look at the ingredient list, what are the ingredients here? Reconstituted apple juice, reconstituted grape juice. What's the message there? Yeah. And then there is reconstituted plum juice, and then there is reconstituted pear juice. And then comes reconstituted cranberry juice and pomegranate juice, the natural flavors. It said on their website, it said no synthetic flavors, right? That doesn't mean they're not adding any flavors. There is natural flavor added to it. And there is ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, and there's fumic acid. But now, if you know about this ingredient list, you probably all are familiar with this. You know this already, that ingredients are listed in the descending order of their amounts. So the first ingredient listed is actually present in the largest amount, and then it goes down that way. So first 4 ingredients are neither cranberry or pomegranate juice. And this is advertised. This bottle shows the pictures of pomegranate and cranberry. It says cranberry and pomegranate juice. Right? So it is very, very misleading. Now, we do have a law that is called Food and Drug Act of Canada. And there is a statement, laws are the standards that we are trying to achieve. So government writes the laws, and then to achieve those standards, regulations are written. That, okay, how will we ensure that companies or any parties, they are actually in compliance with those laws? So for that, regulations are written. Regulations are something that can be tested, but law in itself cannot be tested. There have to be regulations written for a law to be enacted. So here's a statement from the law, 5.1. No person shall label, package, treat, process, sell, or advertise any food in a manner that is false, misleading, or deceptive, or is likely to create an erroneous impression regarding its character, value, quantity, composition, merit, or safety. Do you think based on this law, this is misleading? This is not in compliance with that law? Or do you think it's in compliance? Absolutely misleading, right? It is. This is definitely a misleading label. But there are no regulations for this part of the package. The name and what is it made from, cranberry and pomegranate in this case, that's what it's saying. That statement, there's no regulation that they can write this kind of thing, or this has to be truthful. There is no regulation for that. And because there's no regulation, they can put whatever. They put those images, they write things like that all the times. Right? I'll show you some more examples. Here is garden veggie straws, sensible portions, original, no artificial flavors, colors, or preservative. This is an advertisement. None of these statements are on the top here are actually regulated. They may be truthful, but they may not be truthful. The name is garden veggie straws, and you would expect some vegetables. What kind of vegetables would you expect in there? Would potato be acceptable as a vegetable here? That would be potato chips, right? We don't call potato chips vegetables. So we definitely, when we are buying this, we're definitely not expecting to eat potato chips. We're looking for some other vegetables in there. And look at the ingredient list. The first ingredient is veggie straws. And this is very tricky. This is very misleading because they're saying our first ingredient is veggie straws. And then in bracket, they have the ingredients in descending order for these veggie straws. That is potato starch, potato flour, cornstarch, tomato paste, spinach powder, cane sugar, salt, potassium, and so on. It is all starch. First three ingredients in those veggie straws are starch. And this is their main ingredient they're calling, that is veggie straw, which itself is misleading because this next ingredient after veggie straws is canola oil. There is really no way to know where canola oil falls if these ingredients were listed separately. There is no way to know because they have grouped this ingredient as veggie straws, which is not really an ingredient name. They made up an ingredient, veggie straws, which is made up of all these things. And they do that a lot. Okay, let's see. Here is another one. Cap'n Crunch, oops, all berries. It is a registered trademark. That means it's just a name. Just because they've put berries in the name doesn't make it berries, and you cannot sue them for calling it berries because you can call yourself whatever, right? But when you look at the ingredient list, corn flour, sugar, oat flour, brown sugar, palm oil, where are those berries? There is none. Try explaining this to your kids who want to eat these, that these are not berries. The name says berries, it's so colorful like berries. So front package is an advertisement. It may or may not carry truthful information. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it is required to. Certain kind of information is required to be truthful. Look at these breakfast cereals. Now, this whole grain is the first ingredient. That doesn't have to be regulated. They can say whatever, right? But here you see it has oat fiber helps lower cholesterol. This statement can be made only when all these conditions are met that I've listed here. If these conditions, all of these conditions are not met, this statement cannot be made. And there is further, the statement has to be accompanied with this, that 1 cup of this Cheerio cereal made with oats provides 35% of the daily amount of fiber shown to help lower cholesterol. So how much of that fiber is there? That needs to be listed here. That lowers the blood cholesterol. This is a claim that is approved in Canada and in the United States as well. We have different language in US and Canada for these claims, but these are allowed. But they are approved only after a tremendous amount of research, evidence-based research. Only then government approves those claims. So all these conditions have to be met. It must contain at least 0.75 grams of beta-glucan, a fiber. It must contain at least 10% of weighted recommended nutrient intake of a vitamin or a mineral, any one vitamin or mineral. So they've listed variety of vitamins and minerals here, and the daily value without milk is 10% here, 15% here, so that's good enough. Iron is 30%, so that is met. 100 milligrams or less of cholesterol per 100 grams of food. It doesn't have cholesterol, I believe, right? So this is met. 0.5% or less alcohol. Obviously, it doesn't have alcohol. Then sodium also should be low. So it has to be a healthy food. It should not just be, okay, it has this fiber, so I can put a kilo of sugar in it and it's still good. No, it can't be that way. So these conditions have to be met so that when you're saying that to lower your blood cholesterol level, then it actually is able to do that. It is not able to do that if you're eating a breakfast cereal that has 1 gram of soluble fiber, beta glucan, and then it has 10 grams of saturated fat. Saturated fat raises your blood cholesterol level, and this fiber can lower that a little bit. But if you have a lot of saturated fat in it, then it negates its effect. So that's why these conditions are there. There's a bunch of such claims that are approved in Canada. This whole list of it. I'm not going to go over all these, but you can see that soy protein and cholesterol lowering effect, vegetables and fruits and heart disease. This has been repealed. Fruits and vegetable and cancer has been repealed. It has been archived. But sodium and hypertension claim and so on. So these are accepted, but each of them has a set of conditions they must meet for a product to carry this kind of a claim, and the statements are regulated. For each claim, there are different types of statements that can be used, and they cannot change the language. They have to be within those accepted formats. Okay, so these are regular, but we don't see a lot of these claims because a lot of processed foods do not meet all the conditions required for the food to be carrying these kind of claims because they're overly processed. They're often high in something harmful or low in something useful. So front package, as I said, it has a lot of information. It may also carry nutrient content claims. This is from Health Canada website, CFI website. They're saying, how can you make a healthier food choice? You can read things like a source of fiber. This claim is actually regulated. If that claim is there on the package, it is regulated. Higher good source of vitamin A or iron or something like that, that is regulated. Higher excellent source of a nutrient, that is regulated. So these kind of claims are regulated, but I'm going to show you a little bit about it. A nutrient claim can also have low in sodium, low in fat, or reduced fat, reduced sodium, these kind of things can also be there, and they are regulated. That means there have to be certain amount of reduction or certain level of sodium, for example, for it to be called low sodium or for it to be called reduced sodium. There are conditions for that. But our government rightfully points us to this. Keep in mind, because nutrient claims are optional and only highlight one nutrient, you still need to refer to the nutrition fact table to make food choices that are better for you. This one statement doesn't make the food healthy, right? If you have a low sodium food, but then you have a ton of fat in it, that claim is still valid because these claims do not require a long list of conditions. They can be just standalone claims. So we can look at a package saying that it is low sodium, but then when we consume it, it had a lot of fat in it. Was it really healthy? So that's why it is important to look at nutrition fact table or box, which is on the back panel. That's what I'm saying, that the front package can be quite misleading. It may have true information, it may have false information. So you must always look at the back of the package to actually get the full picture. If you're interested, later on, I can show you all sorts of nutrient claim lists that are approved in Canada. Now, let's look at this. I have just picked some chicken broth packet labels, front part of the label. Which one do you think has the lowest sodium? Any idea? Reduced sodium chicken broth? Okay. Let's see. There we go. Let me see what is in the chart. No salt. Yeah. So that is definitely true. No salt. If you look, only 60 milligrams. That has no salt. But when you look at this 30% less sodium than our regular ready-to-use chicken broth, what does that really mean? That, okay, we make chicken broth that has a certain amount of sodium, and now we are making this 30% reduced, so it has 30% less sodium than the one that. What if your original brand is very high sodium? Now look at the sodium content here. It is 630 milligrams. This is their 920 milligrams. It is still very high. We'll talk about daily value, but this daily value is very high daily value. So even if you may come by this, okay, this is low, reduced sodium, right? So it's better. Yeah, it's better than this, but if you're just looking at sodium, it is not actually low enough to be called low sodium. Okay, so this has no salt added. So obviously there is very little sodium that is naturally present in the meat. Here is something interesting I saw when I was looking for these labels. Look at this. This is organic chicken broth, great value. And its sodium content is 600 milligrams, 25% daily value. That's a very high daily value. But then you look at reduced sodium and you see, oh, wow, this is down to 15%, right? You say, okay, 15%, at least it's much lower. That's better. But then look at the trick here. This one is saying per cup. This one is saying per 2/3 of a cup. So if you don't read this part, you are actually thinking that this is much lower. This is actually 500, if I calculate it right, it's about 560 milligrams of sodium in a cup. And this is 600. Is it really much lower? It isn't. Yeah, we'll talk about potassium in a moment. So labels can be very, very deceptive. Even if we are looking at the nutrition fact box, even there, we have to read it very carefully. Front can be very misleading. Back, if you pay attention to a few things, then you can reduce that, you have to do a little bit of math in your head sometimes, but you can actually make a more educated decision there. So this amount is very, very important. Look at this amount. Now, having said that, the new regulations that are coming, and it may take another 2 years for all the packages to have the new labels, those actually have now regulated the amount that can be listed here, mentioned here. This is much more regulated. So I'll show you that, and that will reduce this, a lot of misleading information, such as this won't be allowed anymore. This is 2 by 3 cups and this is 1 cup. That won't be allowed. It will have to be based on regulated amount that is listed in the regulations. So what is there on the back panel? I was just trying to make a point that front can be misleading. So just take it with a pinch of salt when you look at the front panel. A lot of that information may not be true. But back panel, there is an ingredient list that I have shown you, but we'll talk a little bit more about it. Allergen have to be listed beside the ingredient list on the same plane. That is a new regulation. So that without looking at the front, you can actually see where that ingredient is. Nutrition fact box has to be their date and country of origin. These are some of the things that will be there on the back panel. So let's look at the ingredient list. Now here is another example of the front package. Nature Valley, it has nature in its name. Then it says 100% natural. What does that really mean? What is its meaning? Natural. I don't know what they're trying to say. Because when I look at the ingredient list, remember ingredients are listed in the descending order. It has almonds, whole grain oats. After that, there's high maltose corn syrup, which is not, it's not a natural form of corn. It is definitely processed. Then there's sugar, which is processed. Then there's tapioca syrup, which is processed. Then there's rice flour, which is processed. Palm kernel oil, which is processed. So a lot of these things are processed. What does it really mean by 100% natural? It has no meaning, right? But let's look a little bit more. The original label that we have from 2005 labeling laws, the original label could list these different types of sugar. So you can see that there are sweeteners. There is high maltose corn syrup, because now we are getting a little worried about high fructose corn syrup. We have started to recognize something called high fructose corn syrup. So say, okay, let's make it high maltose, so it won't be as evident to people. What is that, right? So that is a sweetener, that is a syrup. Then there is sugar, then there's tapioca, then there's fructose, there's honey roasted almond. So there's honey in there, that is a sweetener. There's maltodextrin, which is also a sweetener. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 types of sweeteners added here. And there's 7 types of sweeteners added here. All of these things have sugar. If you club them together, their amount would be so high that it might end up being the first ingredient. But they break it down to 7, they use 7 different sweeteners so that they are all used in tiny amounts, so they appear later in the ingredient list, not in the beginning. They've been doing that for a while, and our government has caught up with that. So they have now changed the regulation. They say that the sugars, all sorts of sweeteners that are used, should be grouped together. You can give all the names, but give them in the bracket. Group it together as sugar. Now, all these sweeteners that were separate in small amounts together, that becomes the first ingredient. That will make our life easier, right? So on ingredient list, what should you be looking for? You should be looking for what are the first 2 or 3 ingredients. Yeah, Michelle, that is a very good regulation. It will take a while for us to see this change still, but it's a good regulation. So while we still have old labels and you're buying food, so pay attention to where is the sugar, right? See how many types of sweeteners there are. And also look at the allergen statement. Allergen statement is right here. So the new regulations require that it has to be on the same plane as the ingredient list, so that it's easier when you're looking at the ingredient right there, you see allergens as well. So that makes life easier for people, especially who are allergic. Then there's nutrition fact box. What should we be looking at in the nutrition fact box? As I said, serving size needs to be looked at because they may be misleading sometimes. And think about it, do I really eat this much amount? So if it says 100 grams of this, do I really eat 100 grams of this at a sitting, or maybe I eat 150 grams, right? So think about that way, because sometimes you buy a big box and we read, okay, it has these many calories. If you don't look carefully, many people don't, they will eat the entire box. That was probably 3 servings. And they actually ate 3 times the calories they thought they ate. So pay attention to that. Again, there are regulations that I'm going to show you that will make this more consistent, less deceptive, but still you need to look at that. There's 5-15 rule that I'll talk about when you look at nutrition facts box. What should you be looking at? Also compare sugar versus fiber. Sometimes it says it has a lot of fiber, but then it also has a lot of sugar. Or it says it has very little sugar, but it also doesn't have any fiber. So fiber is very important. If you're seeing that there's large amount of sugar in your in that food, but there is no fiber, then you should almost be sure that this sugar was added, or it was added in some natural form, such as juice or fruit puree, because the fiber didn't come. Right. So that's something I personally look at. If I'm not too concerned about a lot of sugar in food. For example, if I'm buying an apple, if apple has sugar, yes, it does, but it also has fiber. I'm fine with eating that. But if I look at apple juice, it has sugar, but it has no fiber. I'm not going to buy that. So I use this rule that if sugar comes without fiber, that's not something I will consider healthy at all, or comes with very little fiber. Potassium and sodium, the comparison is important. As one of you also mentioned, high sodium and low potassium diet lower our risk of hypertension. Companies have been processing foods. During processing, a lot of potassium, natural potassium from the food is lost. And companies sell food, or low sodium. Yeah, okay, it is low sodium maybe, but because of processing, potassium was also lost. That really doesn't make it healthy for us if we are concerned about hypertension, because we need to be looking for food that is higher in potassium, lower in sodium. Potassium naturally present, it could be added as well. That could be a different problem, but typically look for, if you're looking for low sodium products, also check how much potassium there is. Is there enough? So let's first talk about the serving size, and then we'll look at nutrition fact box. Originally, these are yogurt. This is based on 100 grams. This is based on 125 grams. Now, if you're comparing these two, you'd have to do a lot of math in your head. And obviously, when we go shopping, we can't do that much math, right? To buy everything, we not keep doing math. But the new one says that this amount of yogurt is now regulated. So if it is a single serve package, if this package, it is reasonable to say that normally a person would consume this entire content in one serving, in one sitting, then the label should be based on the entire package. And if it is a multi-serve package, if you buy a big container of yogurt, like 1 liter or something, that a person typically would not consume in one go, then it should be based on regulated amounts. So regulated amounts are given for various foods in the regulation. So the companies have to now look at that. Either it has to be single serve, so entire package, or if it is multi-serve, then it has to be based on the regulated amount. And there come challenges with this, and government has addressed those as well. For example, if you're buying bread, slice of bread, it can be thin, it can be thick. So that is also going to be regulated now, such that it is easier for you to compare. Bread, there are 2 slices here, 2 slices here, they're comparable amounts. Here, they're actually quite different amounts, right? So they have to be close to what the regulated amount is. Same goes for crackers. These are whole pieces, so you're counting pieces. It is important that they have to be comparable. So similar amounts rather than very different amounts. Say it's 28 grams, say it's 14 grams, based on number of crackers. But here we have, doesn't matter how many crackers, the amounts are similar. Here's 21, here's 19. So this is coming, but it is not yet been adopted by all the food. Now let's look at nutrition fact box. Let me just make sure I leave some time. So here we have 515 rule. If you notice, the new label will require this 515 rule. The old label had different things. First of all, this amount was not regulated, right? The ones that we have still not regulated. The calorie now has to be bolder. Okay, so that's a format change. The total fat within that saturated trans fat needs to be listed today, and it needed to be listed before as well. So these are there. There's a change here. Sodium has to be listed, but there's no potassium requirement. Now the new label requires the potassium should also be listed, because if you're looking for low sodium, we should be looking for higher potassium as well. Then there is carbohydrate. We have sugar here. Now the sugar will require to have daily value. Okay. Then there is vitamin C, vitamin A. These were required to be listed. They are no longer required to be listed, because there's only so many nutrients that can be required to be listed. Otherwise, it gets too confusing. So we introduced potassium, and so we got rid of those 2 vitamins there to make it more relevant to what we really need to look at. So calcium and iron are still there, which are important. And their amounts have to be listed now. Before, only daily value needed to be listed. Somebody would say, you know what, daily values are based on a reference person, a normal average person. I'm not an average person, so I really want to know how much it is. And for that, the government has said, okay, these need to be given in amounts as well. So these are some of the changes, but then you look at the statement at the bottom, 5% is less, 5% or less is a little, and 15% or more is a lot. And this is 5-15 rule. So if you look at daily values, because most people would not know how much potassium I need to consume in a day, or how much calcium I need to consume in a day. Some of you might look at that, but most people don't want to remember all that. So, but they want to be able to see, does it give me a lot of potassium? Does it give me a lot of calcium, right? You can use this rule, 5 or less percent, it has very little amount of that nutrient. 15 or more, it has a lot. 25 or more, it is an excellent source of that nutrient. Except for vitamin C. Vitamin C, we have amounts. It's not required to be listed anymore, but 30% is considered a good source. 50% is considered an excellent source. So this amount, when we compare, not only sodium, but along with that, we need to look at potassium. So the ones that are in green, we should try to look for higher amounts of these. The ones that are listed, I have highlighted as red, those are the ones we should be looking lower amounts of, because these are the ones that we are consuming too much of, and their high intake is linked to various kind of illnesses. These are the nutrients that we may not be consuming enough of, and we need to be looking for higher amounts of these generally. Okay, I have reference values here. If anybody wanted to look at that, you could look at that. And then there are dates, best before dates, expiration date. These are not required on all foods, but some food that have shelf life less than 90 days, they are required to have best before date or expiration date. They are required to have it. But otherwise, the ones that have more than 90 days shelf life, they're not required to have it. Therefore, the canned products really are not required to have it. But typically, we see that they do have them. These best before dates are not related to food safety, actually. They're related to food quality, that the quality of this food will be best up till this date. After that, we don't know. It may deteriorate. So it is not linked with food safety. Expiration date is actually linked with food safety, and there are some products that are required to have an expiration date. For example, infant formula, right? Or some kind of meal replacement product or something like that. They're required to have it. Otherwise, best before date is what we look at. Country of origin. I know some of you might be, interested in knowing what is the regulation regarding that. We don't require, for most products, not required to have a producer name. An important name is just fine. So it could be importer or it could be manufacturer. Okay, so and it's complicated. There are regulations. If it is a product of Canada, then it has to be a product of Canada. It has to be produced in Canada. Most of its ingredients, spices could be imported, but other than that, it should be a product of Canada. So there are regulations regarding that. If you have questions about it, I can try to answer those, but that's where I end. I can take your questions if you have any.
Okay, we have no questions. I want to thank everybody for your time and for being here with us today. And thank you to Dr. Dua for another wonderful presentation. And please mark your calendars, because Dr. Dua is doing another session for us on December 3rd from 12 to 1. So mark your calendars, and an email will be going out shortly with the registration. So
thank you very much. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thanks.